Just like that. We're back. Basketball is so back. We're good again. We're good again. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. That is Cameron Stewart from Locked On Baylor, co-hosting today because he has facial hair and got a haircut. We will talk
all of them.
How Big 12 basketball might be back. People are murmuring. People are saying after this weekend, we're starting to finally clarify who will and will not be good. And then we'll talk West Virginia losing its head basketball coach to Iowa. That might happen. There are some things pointing to that being the case, which would be very bad for the Big 12 Conference. Also, there's an SEC administrator who is saying that every team that rushes the field after winning a game should have to forfeit. That's right, forfeit that said game. The SEC is full of soft little crybabies. That's right. I went Scotty B on them. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Cam, Big 12 basketball this weekend. Cool. I think we're finally starting to see this separation of sorts between the haves and the have-nots. Houston, best team in the conference. We can establish that. We know that now. Arizona, still very good. High seed in the tournament. Iowa State, same case for them. Cincinnati, you're not going to make it. Oklahoma State, smell ya. I know the Utah thing was a bit of a misnomer here. West Virginia, goodbye. UCF, Colorado. Like, we can start ruling out Arizona State, obviously. Even Kansas State to an extent. I believe we finally found a clear cutoff between tournament and non-tournament, and maybe the only school that's in that middleman could still be the Wildcats of Kansas State. But I like BYU. I still like partially banged up Baylor with the weird thing about will this guy play and will that guy play and what's going on. I even kind of like TCU now. I think, and maybe I'm crazy, the Big 12 is finally seeing some clarity compared to weeks prior.
What's so funny about this is we're coming off a weekend where Kansas loses to like literally one of the worst teams in any major conference. And we're like, yep, it's all back to normal in the Big 12, baby. This is how it's supposed to be. but we go like we are forced to, in all walks of life, apparently, go by the SEC football model. And that is not just, hey, like, are all your teams good and competitive and beating each other and having good home environments? Or do you have a couple of really good teams at the top that everyone can point to and say, well, they were on our schedule, so that makes us really good? You following me there? Because that's what the Big 12 has become again, is that these teams at the top are the teams at the top, right? So Baylor and Kansas, who were supposed to be there, obviously are not. But I think you have a pretty damn solid top four right now with obviously Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, and Tech. Like that is a damn good top four. Tip your cap with it. That's what you're bringing to the committee. And obviously some more teams getting in there. But now that you have kind of that certified top 3 or 4, which we've been searching for a month into conference play, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And you still get the stories, man. Like Kansas State's still a great story. They're not dead. I disagree. I don't think West Virginia's dead. Baylor, they're there. They're going to make the tournament. They're there. They're participating. So it's kind of, after all the doom and gloom that we kind of shared in, it looks like the Big 12 each of the last 4 or 5 years. You know, you got a couple teams at the top that can make the Final Four and therefore could win the national championship. And you've got a really strong second and top half of the third tier in this conference.
And, you know...
And Kansas, forget Kansas, dude.
Well, that's Kansas, why I haven't.
Kansas is ruining this.
If you're somebody who roots for Kansas and you're listening, this is not an anti-Kansas deal here. It's just the fact that we know you could lose probably the rest of your games in conference play. They'll find a way to. You're okay. They're gonna find a way to put Bill Self and Kansas in the NCAA tournament. That's a bit hyperbolic, but I'm not worried about the Jayhawks making the tournament. Yes.
Could you imagine? Can I lay this scenario out here for you? Because we're just going to do conference show. We'll throw out hypotheticals. Kansas football did not play home games this year. They didn't play games on campus. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when that happened?
Also, man, O'Doul's good.
Good stuff. Yeah. You like O'Doul's? Goes right down the hatch. Right down the
Heineken
big
Zero.
hatch.
Gosh.
I was around some people this weekend that were indulging in some age zeros. But let me put this out there for you. Last year's Kansas basketball team, this year's Kansas basketball team, if God forbid something happened, a tornado blew the roof off of Fog Allen and they had to play in Kansas City, would they be like a nailed on tournament team?
Yes, they wouldn't lose again.
Oh, man, they stink.
Wouldn't lose again. They freaking.
Utah's not even a road game, dude. That's a neutral site. Come on.
No, they love Kansas City. Don't make it Kansas City because that freaking Big 12 tournament every
they
year.
Had to play in Topeka.
Oh, it's done. It's over.
Emporia.
They had to go to Manhattan and play on campus at Kansas
Wichita.
State.
Wichita's not that far.
No, it's not bad. It's not bad.
They would be an NIT team.
TCU has one game against a ranked team coming up. It's Texas Tech, and it's at home. It's their next game. After that, Cincinnati, West Virginia, UCF, Baylor, Colorado. 4 of those 5 are very winnable. There's a path. Frogs have won 4 or 5 in conference play. There's a path. So a couple of the teams, I mentioned West Virginia.
Jace Posey, man.
Kind of ruled them out. For West Virginia, it's like, okay, you lost Tucker. So,
yeah. West Virginia, though, is kind of close to their magic number here. If they get 19 wins, they're in. Baylor and West Virginia are both there. If they get to 19, they have a couple of ranked wins. Baylor obviously beat Kansas. They beat St. John's. West Virginia beat Kansas as well. They would need to win. I think that's 4 of their last 6.
4 of 6, yeah. And you got at Texas Tech.
Probably a conference tournament game. It's not easy.
BYU, at Utah. Even then, you're saying West Virginia, who's currently, they're sitting at 15-10. If they, in their last 7, we'll count the Big 12 tournament, if they go 4-3, yeah, 19-13, man, that's tough to argue against. But in a year, here's the problem with that. A year where I think we can start to understand that the committee will look at the Big 12 and say, point and laugh, weak, stupid.
They will look at it differently the way they have the last 5 years.
Yeah. So
fair or not, but they will.
Usually 19-10 will do it. SEC, Big 10, even Big East will have enough to carry the boat so the Big 12 might get bumped. 19-13 Big 12 might get bumped.
God, they love the Big 10 too. I just don't get it, man. And I wouldn't say I watch the Big 10 basketball like top to bottom, but I watch it more this year than I have in past years. I just don't get it. Like,
on Sundays, because it's on Sundays.
Yes.
Did you see the Terrence Shannon deal?
That was great.
Oh,
that was fantastic, man.
And then the AD at the podium post game, just like, his family was here. He was here. Our fans were excited.
Because what do you do in that moment? The banner's like the size of a house.
Yes. The worst part. So for context, for those who are like, what? Terrence Shannon was enshrined. His number placed in the rafters at Illinois when they dropped the little veil. It was upside down. It was upside down, and which is just ultimate disrespect. And the worst part is they're like, well, we can't lower it any lower than it is. We're just going to have to put it in the rafters at least for the second half. So it hung the entire second half, and they actually lost the game.
I thought at first it was like, was he the first one to wear like those hats with the upside down city names or logos or something? Yeah. Maybe this is a tribute.
Oh,
it was not. It was not.
Coming up, West Virginia will lose its head basketball coach. And so will Baylor? The question mark. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. You probably heard me say this before because the company gave me the opportunity to do the TurboTax commercial across the entire network. Taxes were really complex and complicated. Now, taxes are easy and smooth with TurboTax. This message from TurboTax says that they are as easy as uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation, an expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on progress, and you get the most money back guarantee. all while you go about your day, no stressing or worrying or waiting. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now. TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only at iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. That is TurboTax. Cameron Stewart, Locked on Baylor. You guys just played them. Mountaineer Paul's Wi-Fi wasn't good enough. Couldn't grab him. Darian DeVries leaving West Virginia for Iowa is something that came up recently amongst a lot of platforms that are related to the Mountaineers, where there are rumors, maybe more specifically with West Virginia fans than even Iowa fans, that Fran McCaffrey will no longer be their head coach, whether via retirement or firing. Hasn't gotten the job done. They're going to go in a new direction, and that DeVries would be the number one candidate for the Hawkeyes. And it seems like, at least from what you said off the air, there's a good chance Iowa City, that university, has a pull at West Virginia's head man.
So these fascinate me, because 95% of these coaching vacancies that you just hear names thrown out there are like total BS. They're such
Which, by the way, we have determined Scott Drew has accepted the Indiana job, correct?
Correct. Yes, okay. Correct. Brad Stevens will be his assistant at IU. I think that's a good move. I think that's a good move for Brad.
And they're bringing Crean back.
About time. Bo Pelini's going to run the offense for Matt Rule at Nebraska too. But like 95% of these are just like, why would the guy do that? You know, he's at a good job now, or he's been there forever, or this job that they're looking at isn't what it used to be. But then you get these that it's like, oh, this makes some sense, right? Mm-hmm. Like DeVries is only in year one at West Virginia, which West Virginia, no doubt, is a better basketball school than Iowa, but I wouldn't say it's drastic at this point. Like, Iowa's got a huge fan base. You travel all over the country, Drake. I guarantee you, every time you go into an airport, there are people with Iowa Hawkeyes gear on. All the time. They're everywhere. Waste management is littered with them. I know you were there. Iowa fans and Nebraska fans, they're everywhere. And so this is a major university that has not lived up to its potential in men's basketball. They have had good players. With Keegan Murray and Luka Garza winning National Player of the Year, and they can't make it to the Sweet 16. And here's Darian DeVries, an Iowan, who did a tremendous job at Drake University, not Locked on Big 12. Did a great job there. Very hot young coach still, and he has a pretty small buyout. So the buyout at West Virginia is 37.5% of what he's owed. At the time of his leaving. He signed a 5-year deal worth $15 million. So quick math, $3 million a year. So after this year, it'll be 12 that's still owed to him. So Iowa would need to pay like $5 million. Jerome Tang, you gotta pay. You gotta buy the entire state. You gotta pay like $20 million to get Jerome Tang out of that job. And yet you could get a nice, good young coach in Darian DeVries, who's done a terrific job with West Virginia, by the way, even getting them to a point where they can make the tournament without their best player, Tucker.
Beat Gonzaga, which Baylor could not do.
Beat Gonzaga, beat Kansas. Like, this is a good team.
At Kansas.
It's a good team.
Yeah.
And his brother, by the way, Darian DeVries' brother. Where did he play college football? You're not going to
don't say. Tell me it's Iowa State. That would make this whole thing blow over.
Oh, Cyclone Larry wishes, man. Oh. He was an Iowa Hawkeye.
That's the other side of the Cyhawk.
There is so much pulling them towards that. Now, Fran McCaffrey is not fired yet, but he should be. I mean, what's tying you down to Fran McCaffrey? You know what I mean?
Hey,
what?
7 NCAA tournament appearances in 15 years.
And he still doesn't know that there's a second weekend in the NCAA tournament. He just thinks it's a 1 weekend deal. Yeah, I mean, from an Iowa standpoint, it's a no-brainer, like to head in that direction, especially considering like. Let me just put it this way. If Iowa gets Darian DeVries, like let's just play this out and they get Darian DeVries, I'm like 90% certain they'll get a better hire than Indiana will in their own conference. Like this Indiana thing, they haven't gotten a good hire, like a real dynamite hire in 20 years.
Was it you that I was saying it's Nebraska football? That's what that is.
Yeah. Like on paper, it's still like it's great in that you'll get a ton of support. It's still a rabid fan base and all that. And there's still a blueprint to win at a place like that. They just can't get anybody. They can't get any coaches. Nebraska was the same way until Matt Rule. Indiana, for all its lore, cannot get head coaches. And I have a feeling that they would have to go like 5 or 6 names down the list the way that Kentucky did. But I think, again, Kentucky and Indiana, it's not the same, brother. This is not 1981. Like Kentucky's 6th is better than Indiana's 3rd choice of head coach. And Indiana, to finish this point, it feels they're too big for someone like Darian DeVries. 1 year in the Power Conference. This is the University of Indiana. Like Mark Cuban's going to be signing this guy's checks. And they're not that good. But how often do you see a guy stay 1 year at a Power 5 or a Big 12 program? Like who would that be? I don't know. Brad Underwood. The coach they just had at West Virginia, Bob Huggins and the illustrious Kansas State era. It happens. It does.
Dane Altman's 2 weeks at Arkansas. Lest we forget. He had a great hog call, and then said smell ya. Jim Schlossnagle, the head coach at Texas A&M for baseball there for a bit, who's now at Texas, which is crazy still to me. They lost their first game, thank God. The thing that I would push back on here, I'm not altogether positive Iowa will move on this offseason. They're probably upset, but also you can honestly kind of keep riding the Caitlin Clark thing for a bit and just be like, hey guys, remember how good it was there for a while? Everybody calm down for a second. We had our moment in the sun. Let's not get too crazy yet. And then give DeVries 2 years to prove himself at West Virginia. And then he's the obvious choice. Like if I'm Iowa, I unload the Brinks truck for those guys, for a guy like that. And I don't know. I mean, I would make it hard for him to say yes. That's going to be their goal. Make it hard for him to say yes to West Virginia. That is hard for him to say no to Iowa. And I just want it to happen next offseason if it does, so he can have another year to assimilate and grow comfortable in Morgantown.
That is part of this, that like West Virginia, they're not the richest school in the world, but they can pony up some money. They can make it worth his while to stay. And it is a good basketball school, like in terms of the interest, like it certainly is. And that would really suck for West Virginia because I think they've got the guy here. I'm not saying this is going to be a Final Four team or anything, but I think they've got the guy the way that Tech got Grant McCasland from a Group of 5 program at UNT. I think he's the one. And it's a weird coaching carousel this year too, because all the Indiana names are guys that are not going to say yes, right? All the names we hear for Indiana are Brad Stevens and Scott Drew, and even Grant McCasland. I think that's probably a stretch. Fit just seems weird, but for a school like Iowa or West Virginia, if it came to that being a more logical coaching carousel, I'm interested to see what names pop up on those lists.
Coming up, the SEC is soft and bad, and I hate it. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this is stupid. The SEC is just trying to display to America that it is soft and sad and that no one should root for it. In the latest breaking news from the Southeastern Conference, an Alabama administrator says the following: Greg Byrne wants every school's team that sees its fan base rush the court to forfeit. Do the right thing. Fall on your own sword. Forfeit your game. Direct quote from Byrne, who said forfeits seem to be the most effective answer. He says, I truly believe it. If we said that the home team, if they storm the field or the court, they're going to lose that game right then and there, that will stop it. You know what, Greg? Yes.
It would, yes.
It would probably stop it.
If you line up the home team and put guns to the back of their head, it will probably also stop the court storming.
Yeah, more or less. Like you've tied up a member of their family. You're like,
that'll work too. Yes.
If you storm the court, we're just going to honorable beheading right here at midcourt. That would prevent it, no doubt, but it's to me, just another stupid move. Like Shane Beamer from South Carolina comes out a couple weeks ago and was like, well, we're the best in the NFL draft. And the SEC, you lost to Illinois in your bowl game. There's so much chatter out of the SEC. The Big Ten's quiet. They're winning national championships. They're doing things that are good. And the SEC wants you to still think it's relevant and good and great and the best. You don't have to tell us. We know you're solid at football still. We understand that. We know you're probably better than the Big 12. And now, continually, idiots keep saying things. And now the cowards of that conference want to stop you, Vanderbilt, from rushing the field.
Vanderbilt, yeah.
When you beat Alabama or Tennessee or anybody else. I get it. You were the king of college football for a while. No doubt. But now that you're losing, now that people are exercising the right to just run on the field and be it makes me wonder, were these people nerds? Were they just total nerds in college? Yes. I loved rushing the field. It was the best part of college. And I know we're trying to prevent it from happening one day, so that my following statement might sound stupid to some of you, but there isn't some horrific example of, this guy was beheaded when students rushed the field. We have not seen an instance of what a horror story. I know we're being preventative here, but it is one of the great things in college athletics, the field or the court storm. And now, no, please don't touch the field.
The only time we saw it, Caitlin Clark, remember, kind of got an elbow, nothing
Stop.
happened. And then the Filipowski thing, which he missed a game, maybe. Here's
and both of those were optics deals. They were both did they even really get hit? Caitlin Clark leans into the guy or girl, whoever it was.
You know how much I love a good analogy. I'm gonna do one right here.
The first time you were ever on Locked On Baylor, you used a coaster and flipped both sides of it or something. You're very good at these little quips.
It's great. So here's what it made me think of, though, because I'm old enough to remember as a baseball fan when you used to be able to hit the catcher when you're coming home. Remember that? You used to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was probably a decade ago now.
Yeah, it was, hey, brother, hold on to the baseball. And then Buster Posey got barreled over in May and missed the rest of the season. And then they changed the rule. And I just had this thinking, even as a teenager, being but this doesn't happen. This happens once a decade that somebody gets hurt, really hurt doing this. So that's the same thing I'm thinking with this court storm. Okay, Kyle Filipowski rolled his ankle. Okay. And his weird cousin babysitter nursed him back to health. Okay, it was fine. This doesn't happen. It looks weird.
Cousin, babysitter, wife.
Correct.
Keep the wife.
Yes,
in there.
I gotta keep that in there.
Yeah. So
this is so soft, man, because this goes against everything the SEC is trying to tell you that it is. Right? What is their slogan? What do they put on all their commercials? What do all the SEC frat bros put in all of their tweets? It just means more. This is the opposite of that. You are telling me it means less. You are trying to actively take away a form of celebration. I get it. We don't want to poison the trees in Auburn, but we can storm the court. Okay, it can happen. Vanderbilt, it's an issue because you got to walk up a flight of stairs to get to the court. But this is the exact antithesis of what the SEC has been branded as. This should be saying it just means less. We want it to mean less to you. Big 12 never has these problems. Big 12, Baylor, you can storm the field twice for all we care. Storm it twice against Oklahoma in 2021. We don't care. It's only the SEC where it's supposed to mean more than any place else.
It just means more
nerds, man.
More forfeits. It means more, I think.
And I've seen people quoted in that story, that ESPN story. One of them was a Vanderbilt student, a student newspaper editor, and was yeah, it costs the university so much money. Who cares, bro? It's not your money. I mean, kind of, you know what I mean? But it's not your money. If they want to pay it, then go ahead and pay it. If they don't want to, stop hiring geriatrics to be your security team. It's pretty simple. Baylor's the same way. It's a good retiree's job to be a security guard, but Baylor doesn't care. Mac Rhodes will pay it.
And the students will enjoy it. I mean,
it costs the university money.
It's less than one student's annual tuition.
Literally, bro. It's so that's such a that's the pro sports fan who's I'm glad we didn't do anything at the trade deadline. I'm glad they saved some money here for next year. Shut up, dude. It's not your money.
I think, and the ESPN article continues, beyond making announcements asking fans to stay in your seats after the game, which only makes me want to rush the field more.
Oh, okay.
Beyond that.
Guys, they said to stay.
College athletic officials have discussed a variety of ideas to try to curb storms, including limiting alcohol sales or imposing even higher fine amounts. The fine amounts is the worst idea because it's only going to keep happening.
Do you know what the fine is for the Big 12 for storming the field?
Does it start at like 25, then 50, then 100? Is that what it is?
See, here's the great part. We have no idea. Because why should we care?
Yeah.
You know, why? I'm not sitting in there being like, oh, this is our second offense.
Yeah, because the SEC
50,
has one. I think they stormed it in like Arkansas stormed in football, and then basketball had to pay it a couple times. And you're just like, oh, okay. Or maybe it was Vanderbilt who beat Tennessee at home, possibly stormed. It was. And then they got like the pro-rated storming thing. Like, well, second offense, we're going to have to charge you more. I think.
Wonder what the Alabama AD thinks about this. He doesn't have to worry about that very much. Not enough fans in the stands at the end of the game. It looks like McLean on a hot Saturday afternoon for any of their home games. So
right,
they don't have to worry about it.
They're too hotty and they're too high and mighty, too hotty toddy to actually rush the field. Their students no way to act like you've been there before, please. The best response to this tweet from CFB Kings, who originally put this ESPN post out, is from Jayhawk Lasso that says, "What a sissy face loser."
That's facts, bro. You tell him, bro.
Personally,
that's it. Can't
agree enough with the Kansas burner. This is another pillar in a long, awful SEC football offseason that's only included really bad takes from every one of their football coaches and administrators. If I'm Greg Sankey, who also has said some really stupid stuff. He did a whole we're underdogs, we want to be underdogs. I think at some point, at some level, we all know you don't have to tell us you're good at football and you make a lot of money. That's okay. But the more you scream it, the more you need to know that I know it, the worse it looks for you and the more egg is on your face. And this is another example. Greg Byrne, you are the biggest loser. You this is stupid. Cam, where can more people reluctantly find your work?
Yeah, reluctantly, I would search Locked on Baylor on YouTube, at Real Cam Stewart on X. Got a lot of USA hockey takes coming up this week. I'm big into it. And a lot of Big 12 takes too. We take plenty of dumps on the SEC on my Twitter feed. So
rematch with Canada coming up, you think?
It better, dude. Canada better hold up their end of the bargain and win and get to the championship.
Against Finland and Switzerland?
Sweden.
What's the difference? What's in 2025, baby? What is the difference? It's all America. We're taking over.
Play Freebird, baby.
This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.